Good Shabbos, everyone. Last week, I spoke about the challenges that lay ahead for all of us as Jews and lovers of Israel in the new year of 2024. And I spoke about how faith in God can help us. Tonight, I want to speak about something else that I believe can also help us in the months and the year ahead as Israel continues this fight. And to do so, I want to share with you three brief stories. Story number one. I'm sure you would agree that one of the worst moments of the war after October 7th is when hostage Yotam Hayim was shot dead together with two other hostages, Alon Shamriz and Samar Talaka, by Israeli troops who mistakenly identified them as a threat on December 15th in northern Gaza. This remarkable trio had escaped captivity, hid out for several days, and put up signs to try in vain to attract soldiers' attention. Emerging in full view of Israeli troops, they had stripped to the waist and were waving an improvised white flag, doing everything new to show that they represented no danger, that they were escaped hostages. And yet, tragically, all three were shot dead. A tragedy the IDF is still investigating. But 5 days later, back on December 20th, Yotam's mother, Iris, recorded a remarkable message. Not one of hate and anger, but of love and forgiveness for the very Israeli soldiers who had killed her son. She told them not to question themselves or their actions, that what had happened was not your fault, but solely that of Hamas. And you have to look after yourselves, because only that way can you look after us. She went on to invite the very soldiers who had killed her son to visit her and her family, telling them that anyone who wanted to come would be welcome. She recorded, "We want to see you with our own eyes and hug you and tell you that what you did, however hard it is to say this and sad, it was evidently the right thing in that moment. And nobody's going to judge you or be angry," she judged. Not me, not my husband Raviv, not my daughter Noya, and not Yotam. May his memory be blessing. And not Tuval, Yotam's brother. We love you very much, and that is all. The very next day, a member of that IDF battalion visited that family. What an extraordinary mother and human being. I'm not sure I could record such a message after something like that would have happened to me and my family. But that was her. That was Iris. A mother who understood that the best response to such an unspeakable tragedy was to forgive those soldiers and to understand the hardship that they're dealing with. Stories number 2 and 3. As you may have read, the letters are found everywhere, in their bedrooms, which their parents go through after the dreaded knock on the door when the 3 uniformed officers outside, a sight that every Israeli both understands and fears. Or the letters are in their pocket, found after they're wounded or killed and their uniforms are removed by the medics at the hospitals or worse. Thankfully, most letters are never read because most Israeli soldiers come home. But far too often these days, young women and men are not coming home. And in many of those cases, the letters are found. 2 of these letters have recently been the subject of a good deal of attention in Israel. One was an extraordinary letter from Sergeant First Class Ben Sussman, may his memory be for a blessing, who was killed battling Hamas terrorists in Gaza. He writes, "I'm writing you this note on my way to the base. If you're reading it, then something apparently happened to me. Since you know me well, no one is happier than I am at this moment, for I was able to fulfill my dream in battle. I'm happy and grateful for the privilege I will soon have of defending our beautiful land and the Jewish people. And if something happens to me, I do not permit you to sink into sadness. I had the privilege of fulfilling my dream and my life's purpose, and you can be certain that I'm looking at you from above with an enormous smile. Mom and Dad, I imagine that I'll sit next to Grandpa, and we can fill each other in on what happened from his war to my war. And maybe we'll talk some politics too, and I'll ask him what he thinks. If God forbid you're sitting Shiva for me, turn it into a week with friends, family, and a good time. And there should be food, good food, and plenty of meat. And letter number 2 is from Sergeant Major Yosef Gitratz, 25-year-old, killed in battle in Gaza. And this is the text of the letter that he left behind. Dear Mom and Dad, I love you so much. Everything is as it should be. I chose this. I lived a good and interesting life. And yet at the same time, I was never afraid of death. I could have chosen to hide and not come here to fight, but that would go against everything that I believe in and value and who I consider myself to be. So I had no alternative. I would make the same choice all over again. I would do the same again and again. I made this choice myself and pursued it to the very end. I died honorably for my people. I have no regrets. I love you very much, and I'm proud that you are my parents. You gave me a great deal. I had a very interesting, full, happy, unique life. My death only emphasizes that. I'm certain, Mom and Dad, that you're feeling a great deal of pain, but you will overcome it. That's what I want. That's what I want very much, and that's the main thing that I want. You both have many people close to you who will support you during this time. Please find something positive in all this. Be with the grandchildren. Help Israel. I'm fine. My friends, it takes an incredible nation, an extraordinary people, to produce young people like this that can write such letters. And to me, all 3 of these stories remind me what it's going to take for Israelis to, God willing, win this war this new year of 2024. On this 91st day of the war, it's getting harder and harder to stay spiritually and emotionally strong. Just as good news builds us up, bad news brings us down. How many of us still feel we haven't been ourselves since October 7th? With the war intensifying in the south and rocket fire increasing in the north of Israel, as you know, Israel faces immense military challenges, not like any country, perhaps in the history of the world, has ever had to fight against. Israel's now fighting on 7 different fronts, and it's hard to imagine in an insight. As of today, 509 soldiers have been killed. 175 of them have died in ground operations in Gaza. Difficult news about hostages and the tragic accounts those freed have shared have contributed to the weariness I know that so many of us are feeling. It's precisely at this time, I believe, that we need a bump of faith, vision, and inspiration. And I think that Mother Iris Chaim, Sergeant First Class Ben Sussman, and Sergeant Major Yosef Gitraz, may their memories be for a blessing. They are some of just the everyday inspiring Israelis that have kept my faith in the state of Israel during these difficult days. Israel cannot lose this war, and they will not lose this war with people like these 3 heroes. The Israeli people will not give up, and neither can we. Israelis continue to need our support to make sure now that the new year is beginning, when Congress returns to session next week, the voices of hate and anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism grow loud. There are many more of them than there are of us. But we cannot let those voices overpower our voices of righteousness and solidarity with the people of Israel. Let us continue to advocate for the state of Israel, educate our neighbors, call members of Congress, speak out whatever we can to make sure that the world understands what Israel is up against. Israelis are fighting the fight, and I believe we need to do what we can as well. And that's why this June, I want us to have an opportunity to play another small part in whatever we can do here at Beth Yeshurun to help the state of Israel. In this June, we'll be planning a solidarity mission to Israel. It'll be different than other trips that my wife Lisa and I have had the honor of leading in the past. This really isn't a trip for first-timers. This is a trip for those who've been before, that have seen the sights, and we'll see some of them on this trip. But this is a trip to go for 4 different reasons. Perhaps a different trip than you've ever been on before. During our 9 days together this June, there are 4 goals. As Lisa and I were meeting with our trip planner last week, he outlined 4 reasons that he thought was important for us to go. Number 1 was to volunteer, to get our hands dirty, to help wherever we can, where Israelis may need help this upcoming June. Number 2 was to bear witness to the places and people, the survivors and those displaced, to make sure we can come home and tell the stories, because as we know, there are already those who are denying what happened. Number 3, to learn what led to October 7th and what needs to happen in the future so it never happens again. And number 4, he told us to comfort and be comforted. Now, I can understand to comfort, to go there, to show my support, but I wondered, what did he mean to be comforted? It's up to me to offer support. I'm living my comfortable life here in Houston, Texas. But now, after hearing these stories that I shared with you tonight, I think I understand what he was saying. Because by going and meeting more Israeli heroes, I'll be inspired by their resiliency and strength. And we can all be inspired and thus comforted that Israel will continue to not only survive, but thrive. Because that's who Israelis are. And that's how they've survived 75 years of other battles and wars. Their resiliency can inspire us and therefore comfort us. And I hope all of you can join us on our trip this June. This Shabbat, and as we begin a new year, let us continue to have faith in the Israeli people. Their strength should comfort us all. And as God instructed Joshua, be strong and of good courage, Hazak ve'amatz. Israelis are also telling us, Hazak ve'amatz. Be strong and of good courage. Shabbat shalom, everyone.